Hi, today I'd like to share some thoughts about working memory and learning. Learning is a wide concept. It's studied in everything from sea snails to children and university students. One definition of learning, coming from Eric Kandel, the Nobel laureate who studied learning in sea snails. He defined learning as the process by which we acquire knowledge about the world. And a more human-oriented definition is this one. Learning is the relatively permanent change in a person's knowledge or behavior due to experience. The duration of the change is long-term rather than short-term. The locus of the change is the content and structure of knowledge in memory or the behavior of the learner. And there we have two additional key words, long-term and memory. Long-term memory is also a family of concepts. We have, for example, the non-declarative memory, such as motor skills, learning to ride a bike. And then we have the declarative memory, which is available to consciousness, such as remembering daily episodes or remembering the meaning of words. And those two kinds of declarative memory is sometimes called episodic memory and semantic memory. Now, on this map, we don't have working memory at all. If we would look for working memory on a map, it would probably be a map of selective attention, where there is a large overlap behaviorally and neuroscientifically between controlled selective attention and spatial working memory. And there are a lot of differences between working memory and long-term memory. Working memory is shorter, usually seconds, versus long-term memory, which is longer. There is a working memory capacity. There is no equivalent capacity limit really for long-term memory. We have different neuronal mechanisms and different key areas in the brain involved in these two types of memory. But working memory is often necessary in order to store something in long-term memory. When we take in new information, we often retain it in working memory, and unless we lose it from our working memory store, we have the chance to encode it into long-term memory. So here's the first suggestion why working memory matters for learning. Working memory and attention allows us to select and maintain task-relevant information during learning. And if we speak specifically about academic learning, such as learning in school, we have also two different aspects of this relationship. One is that we use working memory and attention to focus and keep information in mind when we perform a test. But the other is that the long-term consequences, which is learning over time. So working memory matters for academic performance, both for performance and learning over time. So let's look at some examples, and this example is from mathematics. In this meta-analysis of a large number of studies, around 35 studies, they saw a correlation of around 0.5 for different categories of mathematics, and on the one hand, and visual spatial working memory capacity on the other hand. And this holds for different aspects of mathematical abilities, such as both mathematical reasoning and numerical operation. And it also holds for different ages. In this case, they studied ages from 4 to 15. Here are two studies that have looked at the long-term impact. What they've done in these studies is measuring working memory capacity at one time point, then following children over several years. And they can show that the performance at the outset is predictive of the rate of improvement. So if we want to make a graph of this, we could plot the academic development of a child over several years, for example, and draw a line, kind of a learning line. And working memory capacity would then both affect the intercept, which is the performance, initial performance here, as well as the slope, which is the learning rate over time. This influence is illustrated in many studies, and one of the largest one is this one, studying working memory and mathematical learning in 17,000 children. So what we did here was that we had children performing a combination of working memory training and mathematical training, and then we had independent tests at 3 time points, and we plotted the development over these 3 time points and took the slope there as a measurement of learning. And then we looked at the impact of working memory training. And here you can see the amount of training, working memory training the kids did, and how that affected the slope of learning. So the colors here represent different amounts of training, from 4 minutes up to 16 minutes per day. And you can see here that the more that working memory was improved by training, the steeper the rate of learning. But we can also see a second thing here, and that is that there are some inter-individual differences. So the bars to the left here, they are from kids that had a particularly low working memory from the start. And the bars to the right is from children that had a higher working memory capacity from the start. And as you can see, the impact on the slope is larger in the latter group. So this might be a difference in plasticity or trainability, and we've looked at this in other studies too and shown that it's partly a genetic component behind this. Here's the second study illustrating the dual impact of working memory on performance and learning. It is a study in almost 600 children randomized into control and cognitive working memory training. And the performance was measured before training, directly after training, 6 months later, and 12 months later. And as you can see here, we had they had a small improvement, around 0.2 standard deviations, directly after training. And this could be interpreted rather as an impact on the mathematical performance. But then they followed the kids and saw a larger and larger difference between the training group and the control group. So this is not an aging effect, because they always subtract away the control group. But rather, the interpretation would be that a better working memory influences their learning of geometry over time. And this example was for mathematics, but they saw a similar effect also for reading and for Ramer's matrices performance, where there was a very small initial improvement, but it gradually increased. And 3 years later, the kids that went into the training group had a 60% higher probability of entering academic track in secondary school. Just to summarize, we also need to remember that learning is a wide concept, even long-term memory is a wide concept, and there are many factors that affect learning, of course. One of them is curiosity, intrinsic motivation, and grit. We know that associations to prior knowledge is important. We know that repetition and feedback is very important. but then we also have working memory. So it's not sufficient, but for many types of learning, it seems to be necessary. Thank you.